Welcome to Satsang. Such a beautiful blessing and beautiful joy to be together with you all and to join together with our family from all over the world, even though we're not physically together, but to be able to be together in heart and spirit, in truth. What does it mean to be human? Well, if you look it up in the dictionary, if you look up human, it's going to give you all of the specific details. Our genus and species will get Homo sapiens sapiens, right? It'll give you all of the characteristics that separate us from some other species. But that's only the DNA of humans. That's only the part that says we are more similar to another human than we are to, say, an ape. That's all it means. Is that similarity on a purely genetic level, physical level, we are more similar to each other than any of us is physically, genetically, to our nearest genetic relative, the ape. That's all it means. So usme koi badi baat nahi hai. It's not necessarily something to feel very proud of, right? It's just a species, like there are so many other species on Earth. We are just one. But when we say, what's different about humans? What's special about humans? Why are humans seen as the pinnacle of evolution? Now, physically we know they're said to be that because we can look back over the last, tens and hundreds of millions of years, and we can look at an evolution. First we were this. Then we became that. First we were single-celled. Then we became multi-celled. In the water. Then we came up onto land. We can follow that. Then we learned to stand on 2 feet. Okay. But why are we considered the pinnacle of evolution spiritually? And the reason for that is that it's said that a human being is the only species on Earth that actually can be conscious of itself. That no other species is able to look at itself and say, for example, that is just a pattern of energy in my brain called anger. It is not me. Right? We're the only species that can do that. Other species get angry, they act in anger. They are threatened, they act in anger. They're hungry, they grab whatever's around. They're sexually aroused, they'll grab whatever's around. There's no decision-making process other than on the purely physical level. Is this the good food to eat? Is this the right one to mate with? Just on a purely survival basis level. But humans are able to actually make decisions that have nothing to do with survival. We're the only species that's actually able to say, there is a wave of this experience that we call anger arising in me, but I am not going to act on it. I'm just going to look at it. I'm just going to watch it. Humans are the only ones who can do that. And that's why we are said to be the pinnacle of spiritual evolution, because only when you can do that can you say, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to chant japa. I'm going to read scriptures. I'm going to go to satsang. I'm going to purify and fine-tune my mind such that I can actually experience the truth of who I am. That is something only humans can do. But when we talk about being human, if you say to somebody, Hare insan to bano, right? What does that mean, be a human? Well, though obviously you're a human. You're standing on two legs, giving birth to live young, right? What does it mean to be a human? When we tell someone, Hare aadmi bano, insan bano, what do we mean by that? Well, we mean use that power that you have of insight, of discrimination, of the power to choose. Act with compassion, act with love, act with courage, act with caring, act with loyalty. These are the sorts of things that we mean when we say, Ari, be a human for God's sakes. But now we're actually in this beautiful opportunity to really redefine not just humans, but humanity. A very, very beloved, dear friend of mine, Dr. Bruce Lipton, who's a very, very famous author and speaker and just amazing overall being, speaks a lot about how we went from being single-celled organisms to being multi-celled organisms. And that when we did that, it transformed what we could do. When an amoeba became a multi-celled organism, the energy, the ability, the power was amazing. When we realize that as humans, we are actually called upon to be part of humanity, like a single-celled organism becomes a multi-celled organism. When we realize that that which we can do, be, accomplish as just a human, compared to what we can do, be, accomplish when we are connected as humanity, this greater organism called humanity, that's where we're moving, spiritually evolutionary. That we've come into being humans. Now we need to move into humanity. That collectiveness. That it's not just me as my individual human. What I want, what I can do, what I can accomplish, what I can achieve, what I can have. But actually, how can I actually recognize that I'm part of something much greater, something much more powerful? Humanity. And until and unless we realize that, we're going to be stuck. Like an amoeba is stuck. And only when we really realize that humanity are we going to be able to actually actualize the full power of being human. That the full power of being human is not in an individual but in a collective. And that's what we're here for. So I think that's what it means to be a human, but also what it means to be collective humans as humanity. And if anyone here has a question, I would be happy to take it. Did she have a question? Yes. I have been waiting for you to ask a question all week.
Namaskar. I have a question. I'm blessed to have a guru since I was of her age, and since then I've been following chanting japa and all that thing throughout till now. But of late, I have also have interest in meditation. Like I have inclined towards it more. So, is there any definition in terms of if you want to progress spiritually, like one path is better than another, or is it like if I get free time? Earlier I used to just chant nam whenever I get time, but now I feel to do meditation more than chanting. So
beautiful. And if you have a question after Mom, we'll take yours too. So all of these paths are beautiful. Whether we are chanting japa, whether we are meditating, whether we are engaged in seva, whether we are engaged in puja and bhakti, whether we are engaged in reading scriptures, they're all different ways in. Ultimately, the goal is get in. The way that I always think about it is, here we are on the banks of Ganga. Ganga is the mother goddess, right? That bestower of liberation. But how you get into Ganga doesn't matter. You can walk down the beautiful marble steps of Paramartha-Nikketan. You can walk next door to Gita Bhavan. You can go down the ramp. You can walk up to Ram Jhula and hang out on the beach and go in from the sand. You can go up to Lakshman Jhula or past where there's big, big rocks and jump into Ganga from the rock. But it doesn't matter. Ganga's not saying, oh, you walked in off the beach. Okay, so you only get like this much blessings, this much moksha. But you jumped off the rock, like you get double blessings. She's not saying that. Doesn't matter how you get in. The only point is get in. So, if chanting japa connects you deeply to the divine, and you feel it, and you feel that connection to God and to your true self, beautiful, do it. If you experience in meditation, do it. You can also do both. I know personally, I begin my meditation practice with japa. I begin by chanting japa. It gets me into this very, very beautiful meditative state of my heart being opened. My mind is clear. And then I go into meditation. So, however it works for you. The difference is meditation usually requires us at some point to be seated with our eyes closed. Now, yes, there's walking meditation. There's so many other types of meditation that we do, but we really benefit if we have some seated, eyes closed meditation practice. Even if we also do walking meditation. Even if we also do eating meditation. It's actually a beautiful practice, mindful eating. It's a beautiful practice. But we really benefit with a seated, eyes closed, or eyes sort of 3/4 closed meditation. Japa, though, you can do it all day long. You can be driving the car and doing japa. Grocery shopping, doing japa. Washing the dishes, doing japa. So it's somewhat more versatile in that way. And so I think that you should do both. When you've got time and space to be seated with your eyes closed, meditate. Maybe you want to begin the meditation by a chanting of japa. And then as you move through the world, allow that mantra to keep chanting, keep chanting, keep chanting. Okay. Yeah. It's like saying, you love her. Well, is it better to love her by hugging her, or is it better to love her by feeding her, or better to love her by reading to her, or better to love her by combing and braiding her hair? Well, they're all things you do as a mom. There's no better or worse. They're all just different ways of showing her, that you love her. So in the same way we love God, these are all just different ways of connecting in love to God. Beautiful. Does anyone else have any questions? Yes. That's okay. He'll just give you the microphone.
It's just an emergency. Do they have private meeting, one-on-one? Simple question.
Sometimes. But you want to tell me about the emergency?
So I had initiation by Guruji, Swamiji, 10 years back, and I can't tell everything.
Of course.
So I tried to meet Swamiji, but
he's not here.
Yes, but his divine Shakti, every time I meet him, I get scared and I freeze up. His power is too strong, and he has a busy schedule.
Yes.
So I understand this, but I can't understand that that divine Shakti. It's too strong. I can't understand that. And that's why I freeze up and I can't really speak to him. I can't tell him everything because I kind of get scared because he's on a tight schedule and has that Shakti. So that's why maybe if I could speak to you one-on-one,
sure.
Maybe sure. You're more relaxed and not on a tight schedule.
So sure, we can definitely speak, but you've raised some really, really important points. First of all, on the level in terms of talking to me, anything and everything that I have and am is from him, is that beautiful energy. And sure. Now, in terms of freezing up, it's a very interesting situation because Pujya Swamiji, the guru of many of us here, has that extraordinary power. And yeah, it's an extraordinary energy. And he can see everything. And I remember when I first came, being in that presence. And I never froze up, but I remember it was so extraordinary because to be in the presence of someone who actually can see everything, who knows everything and who loves you anyway, is perhaps the most transformative opportunity that any of us get. Because so many of us move through the world kind of doing our best to be on our best behavior. Obviously, we want people to like us. We know there's parts within us that we don't really like, that aren't really something to be proud of, that we feel dark inside. And then, yeah, just one moment, I'll come right back to you. And then we get in the presence of someone who actually sees it, from whom you can't hide it. And I won't go into all the stories, but I've got very personal scientific proof. He sees, he knows. Not even when you're in front of him, but across the world. And the initial feeling, for me at least, the initial feeling was this, like, oh my God, the secret's out. The secret's out, and this divine, amazing being now knows how horrible and dark and wrong and all these things that I am. And yet there he is looking at you. Right? Yeah, see, I understood your emergency. With such grace. And you don't really know what to do about that. Because we've built identities around that. Identities of, this is what's wrong with me. These are my problems. This is my darkness. This is what I have to hide. Because if they know, then nobody will like me. They will leave me. Even in our closest relationships, our families, marriages, relationships, there's always something, some aspects that most of us keep inside because we feel if they know, if they see this, they'll leave me. And then you're in the presence of someone who sees it all and is looking at you with such pure love. And yeah, it takes a moment. And for me, it became the most extraordinary gift. Because my faith in him was so strong and so complete from the beginning that I had this momentary crisis of trying to hold two realities simultaneously. One, I'm horrible, I'm dark, I'm wrong, I'm bad. Two, he loves me and says I'm wonderful and divine. And that conflict, it didn't work. And the only way to resolve that conflict was in faith. To say, well, I've got so much faith in him. And he sees. Maybe this part isn't right. Maybe all of that which I thought about myself actually is wrong. Because there's no way he's wrong. So maybe this other part is wrong. And that for me was where my real powerful healing began. Was okay. And if I weren't dark and wrong and bad, what would I be? And of course I had no idea. But that's where grace comes in. And being able to just sit in that presence of, okay, I no longer have any idea who I am. But I trust you so fully that I no longer can hold on to this false identity. And I'm just going to sit here and allow experience to show me who I am. And it's been extraordinary. And I remember telling my friends back home, he knows everything, he can see everything. And they were like, God, isn't that scary? Well, no, I didn't tell them to help them. I told them just like, what an amazing thing. And they thought, well, God. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm going to come back to that in a moment because that's another important point. With regard to the Guru seeing everything, though, when I told my friends, he can see everything, they said, well, isn't that scary? Like, oh my God, somebody can see everything. And I told everybody, it's actually the most comforting feeling in the world. Because there's always this anxiety of, are they going to find out? Are they going to find out? Are they going to find out? And now you're in a situation where he knows.
Well, they're holding on to fears, but now you're free. That's why you met them, and that's why you're on this path, and they're not, right?
Now, in terms of they don't understand, so you should be quiet part. What I've learned is, and I didn't learn it right away, and I learned it first with my parents and then with friends, is you can't shove truth down anybody's throat. For those joining us online who didn't hear what he was saying, when you tell people and you try to share the experience and they don't understand and they don't listen and they think you're crazy, you just become quiet. And what I learned was you can't shove truth down people's throat. Doesn't work. That absolutely is when they think you've been brainwashed, you're crazy, you've joined a cult, whatever it may be, especially when those people are in America. In India, there's still a lot more of a culture that understands the guru, the ashram. But in America, you try to tell this, and yeah, that is what they think. But what I've learned is the truth itself is a magnet. And while you definitely don't want to try to shove it down people's throats, and this, by the way, is the same teaching for people who come and say, I'm on a spiritual path, but my husband isn't, or my wife isn't. And how do I bring them on? They're still, wanting to drink and party and this and that, and they're not interested in spirituality, and how do I convince them? And it's the same teaching, which is you cannot shove it down someone's throat. You cannot convince them as though it were a debate. All you can do is live that truth as a magnet. And what happens is slowly, it actually draws people towards you. When you're really living truth, it draws people. People are they're drawn by peace. They're drawn by joy. They're drawn by truth. And so if you can just live that, really live it, people will come, not all of them. Inevitably, all of us on spiritual paths have lost some relationships. But when you grow physically, when you're young and you're growing, inevitably there are many times where your favorite pants no longer fit, or your favorite shoes no longer fit, and you have to kind of accept that they were great, but they no longer fit. And now that your feet are bigger, your legs are bigger, they no longer fit. And the same thing happens sometimes with relationships, where we may not be growing physically, but we're expanding spiritually. And there are occasionally some relationships that just no longer fit. But those relationships that were real, that were deep, that were rooted really in love, not in drinking buddies or partying buddies or avoid the world buddies, but real relationships. This is what I've seen, is they all come. It doesn't mean they become disciples. It doesn't mean that they also start following. But it means that they're drawn by the truth. And you're able to have very, very deep connections in love, in truth. And then slowly, slowly, they actually start saying, hey, I'm going through this time in my life. What do you think about it? Or, I'm suffering from this or struggling with that. Do you have any thoughts? So, it's not be quiet as in just shut up and don't talk about it.
I talked too much about I told you the whole experience and I was told not to tell the experience. So that was my problem. So
Yeah.
discipline.
Well, this is another important piece is when we have powerful spiritual experiences, a lot of times the instinct is to talk about them a lot.
I have no friends, so that was even more.
Yeah.
So mine was
We're going to take these, if it's okay with you, just because there's so many other people here, we'll take them sort of one topic at a time. No, that's okay. Just as it's helpful if we can move from sort of one topic at a time. But the idea of talking about these experiences, it's instinct. We want to share. The dilemma is that these experiences defy words. They are experiences beyond the mind. If they're experiences of the mind, they're not deep spiritual experiences. That's why spiritually we work to quiet the mind, to find space in the mind, I don't like to think of control the mind as though it were, a circus animal, but to no longer be at the mercy of the mind, to recognize that it's an organ, a muscle. I mean, not biologically, but in terms of how we think about it, that it's something for us to use, but not something to be enslaved by.